Okay, so I'm Angelica Arroyo from Angelique Guides, and I'm here with Rachel, and we are going to be rocking the conversations that have been just kind of our perspectives and presence with the conversations around um, racism, sexism, and all the intersections that we've been present with in our communities. And so this will be a series. There'll be other folks coming on. We couldn't all get on the same time and the same day, so we're kind of one-on-oneing it. And so Rachel's our first like sit down, and this is real talk. No, no like prescribed formula, except that we're going to just respond to some questions and let it flow from there. So I'll let Rachel introduce herself and we'll rock it. Go ahead, gorgeous.
Sweet. Thank you, Angelique. I'm Rachael Rice, and I'm an artist. The end. That's kind of, I've had so many sort of iterations and lives in this life. But I'm always first an artist. And my background is in public education, with a concentration in educating for democracy and critical pedagogy. And then I did some stuff with nonprofit startups, and have also then kind of worked in the personal development, transformational, creative business, kind of online entrepreneurship world. And I write and I teach, and I am a part-time mom of two small stepdaughters. So that's kind of how I spend my days. And I am having lots of these conversations. I think they're really, really important. And I'm really honored to be able to be a part of this one.
Yeah.
Thank
awesome.
you.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. And I think one of the things and kind of the essence of this was to get different points of views, you know, where we all have there's distinctions in the work as activists and advocates. And so, you know, for us, it was a Facebook thing, you know, which I'm like, Facebook is so interesting and so sexy and so full,
right?
So all these conversations and thoughts and things happening. And it's really around how do we get our white partners into the conversations, and folks of color and all the other intersections that we're talking about and living in, to give voice to what it looks like to have these conversations and to be present with all the challenges of it. And recognizing that in the distinctions of these conversations, and when I say that, it's like, you know, like white people speaking to white people, because the lens is distinct, and there's an understanding of some of the background and the conditioning that happens in America with being white.
Right.
Right. And then there's, you know, the conversation with people of color, and then how we all get together and have the conversation, and we're like on it, like real quick. And so it's like, you know, let's get together, and recognizing that media is a way for folks who don't particularly have access to getting out or whatever the case may be, to find a couple of minutes to be able to sit down and go, oh shit, I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
To me, there's so much power in that.
I agree. And I think that using these particular platforms, you know, I always kind of, I give people, you know, some leeway in how they sort of manage their social media. And at the same time, I do have a feeling that, you know, history will look back and notice the way we look back, you know, and see what did newspapers say, you know, and how now we are the media. So as much as our data is bought and sold, and let's like, you know, be real about that, we're also the product, you know, but we do have the ability to use the media and the social media to broadcast, you know, and to use our voice, even though it might not be popular, or it might be controversial, or it might be divisive, or it might be, God forbid we lose a follower or 100, you know, like it might not be great for business. Right. But and like I feel that it's all the tools. We use all the tools.
Right.
And these are extremely powerful tools that we have that people never had before. and so it's really interesting how social media is also, and how people are leveraging their relationships and their audience to have these kinds of conversations that then can be, rippled out into having more conversations, which is kind of, that's the only way, out is through. So
yeah,
here we go.
yeah, right on. And I think, for me, one of the things I realize is, like, to me, my social media is always this opportunity to keep it as real and raw as possible, and as imperfect as possible. Because the challenges of it is creating this very aesthetic view and or look about what it means to live this human experience, all the shit we live with, right? And so I'm always like, I'm always putting up the craziest shit, because I'm like, we're reals people here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm like, I'm going to post a video of Rihanna's work. Yes. Will you dance with me? Right? It's like, let's just fuck with this all, but also recognizing the important vehicle that this can be to create a sense of community and to create a sense of connection, and to give us a starting point of that, because it shouldn't be the end all, right? There should be some very real connection in our lives. And so I'm like, all right, let's have some real conversation, because I'm aging as we speak.
Yeah. Right.
I'm like,
for real.
Let's just throw this shit down.
Yeah.
So we have some questions, and these questions we'll ask each person that we're sitting at the table with and kind of chatting with. And so the first one is, in your perspective, as a woke white woman having these conversations all over the place, what is present? And really, like, to me, what is present is all about, like, the here and now. What is present for you as you're engaging, as you're, whatever that looks like, right? Whatever that looks like, being present to the conversation right now.
That's really interesting. I'll first I'll say I wouldn't consider myself woke. I do want to just acknowledge that that's kind of, to my mind, that's sort of a nickname that you might earn. And so that's a really awesome thing to say about someone. And I also am, what's present for me is that as a white Western sort of cisgendered person with crap loads of privilege, it's very, very hard to really accurately, I don't know if accurately is the right word, but the whiteness lens that I look through is very hard to remove. I would say probably impossible to remove, really. And so I don't know about wokeness like as a spectrum. Right. But I do think that there is and I've also kind of always sort of been a more kind of radical thinker, and I was raised by fairly radical thinkers. But just in the last couple years, even since Ferguson, and in seeing, and then kind of really looking at sort of climate change and kind of geopolitical economic trends and stuff, and the stuff that happened in 2008, there's more for me. What's present is there's always more to learn and unpack. What's present for me is a sort of polemic or like dialectic of urgency and space. That there's I really connect a lot the dots between whiteness, the white supremacist capitalist patriarchy, as Bell Hooks talks about, and colonization, and capitalism, and whiteness, and climate change, and how we sort of see everything kind of being looked at through the lens of a commodity or something that is available for me to purchase, to own, to buy, to consume.
Yeah.
Even, and that to me has very much infiltrated personal development and spirituality.
Yeah.
And so then we see it come up in things like cultural appropriation, adopting of indigenous wisdom, and then, selling it by like white folks or white presenting folks. And that's where I kind of, have work of my own to do, because I keep seeing how that's so easy to engage in. And so, what's also present for me is that I live on the earth, and my friends are very much in the land as well. And I have such a deep affinity for the earth that we inhabit. And I'm very, very concerned. I mean, I know that the earth will be here. It's going to be fine. But and so I have, I keep working with empathy is sort of where I what's present for me a lot is there's a tremendous amount of empathy that I try to cultivate to do this work.
Yeah.
It helps me understand, or it helps me at least move outside of the lens of my whiteness, as someone who, like Ta-Nehisi Coates talks about, people who have believed themselves to be white, or people who know themselves to be white,
Yeah.
And so and that helps me not be super caught up in all of my own stuff and my own isms. I don't know if that speaks to your question so much.
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of what's present, right? That it's really the combination of all the things that are running through. And to me, that's important, because these are all the different ways it looks like to inhabit this time and season, generation, that we're living with. It's like the conventional conditioned way of moving, where you get it from school, you get it from like home, and you get this very like, and this is something that I often find myself talking a lot about. I'm like, okay, when we're having these conversations around racism, and there's this idea, there's like this struggle with, the personal and the systemic, and understanding the narratives of this thing. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, because it's in the systems. So
that's right.
So you have this conditioning that's affirmed by layer after layer of experience, right?
Yeah.
And so to me, it's like, as we could move, there was a time where we moved through these areas, and that's what I said on the one video I did. I was like, there's areas in my life that I am not conscious in, that I'm not aware in, because it's not my personal experience. And so even my work is to be like, oh, fuck, oh, shit, okay, all right. You know what I mean? Like, I need to go to school about that. Let me inform myself, let me educate myself, and how am I like being present with that? And so one of the things I find is like, and I did that in the video too, I was like showing like streamers. I was like, streamers, like, this is what we think. Everything is like this one simple, like everything will get fixed, and it's one dimensional. And I'm like, what the fuck is that? I'm over here thinking about like anti-racism work while I'm simultaneously thinking about my dirty toilet. Yeah, right. That's exactly what I used. I used yarn and then like took it apart. I'm like, this is what it looks like. So in what you're talking about being present, like those are all the intersections of what it means to be present right now for you as you're engaging in this. And to me, there's so much power in the naming of that. There's so much power in the presence of what can be considered like something not linear, not packaged. This is what it looks like to fucking live in 2016. We're showing up to do the work, and we still got to take a bath. And then we got to figure out, like, is this water even healthy? Well,
Yeah.
where will my great great grandbabies be? Like, what's gonna happen to the world they're gonna live into? Like, all this
Yeah.
shit is happening while we're like, I'm
Yeah.
happy because I mean, you know what? Fuck it, I'm gonna do coffee with a hit of something, right?
Yeah.
There's so much.
Yeah.
So yes, your present response was amazing, and thank you for sharing that.
Awesome.
The next question is, what's missing in your so, and this to me is becoming super important, and some of the things that I tell folks is like, when we get, and I keep on using the proverbial table because we recognize the table as a place of nourishment and a place of offering where we all gather, and there's no way for us to move ahead and really create equity and justice over time.
Yeah.
No quick fix over time if we don't build our capacity to name the distinctions and the ways that we see what's missing.
Yeah.
Right? What may be missing in the conversation, what may be missing in the action. And I'm always busting on like conversations because everybody fucking loves conversations. They're like, we're gonna have a community conversation. I'm like, no. But I understand it as a tool for a beginning, a first place to expose ourselves to something entirely different.
Yeah.
And looking at the complexity of actions in your perspective and where your GPS, what is missing in the conversations or in the engagements around all these like really loaded, I feel like there's this spiritual teacher his name is Matt Can. And occasionally I like watching him. He's just a hoot. And one day I was watching one of his teachings and he was talking about the ego. And that shit just stood with me because I thought that is perfect. Because he described the ego as an inflamed human being. And I was like, damn it, that shit sounds so good, right? Because it's like the human feeling however they're feeling, their shit gets so irritated, inflamed, and like that, and then things are messy in that space because everything's so inflamed. And I feel like in a lot of this, there's so many layers, so many things that are happening. So in your perspective, what's missing in the conversations, in the layers and intersections of all of these things from your point of view?
I mean, and I'll kind of stay in my lane in terms of the sort of field that I've found myself in or chosen, which is sort of the personal transformation, creative business kind of realm of things, of like artist, heart-centered entrepreneurship kind of stuff. And because I don't really know what it's like to be a stockbroker or a coal miner, So, speaking from my own kind of place, I see a lot of really great, sort of beautiful kind of offerings and overtures and gifts that really creative people are putting out, and a lot of emphasis on intuition, on what's going on in your body, a lot of sort of more what you might call feminine, or divine feminine sort of orientations towards looking at the world's issues. And like, I think that pendulum swinging that way is great because we've clearly seen, what hegemonic masculinity and toxic masculinity has done and continues to do. What I think is missing is a certain amount of intellectual rigor, of a critical lens, of evaluating the impact of some of these movements. So the intentions are awesome, but then the impact is questionable sometimes at best, and at worst, damaging. And I've seen, a lot of white sisterhood sort of things going on around bravery and around love and around love warriorship. And what's missing is the centering of marginalized voices. I think what's missing is a critical lens on the economic structures and the oppressive systems that we are claiming to want to address. And so there's a lack of understanding or even any kind of conversation around
Yes.
capitalism.
Yes.
And how that really has an impact on what self-care is possible for most people. Because, you know, we all, and the anxiety that I think we kind of feel as a culture. And there's a sort of neoliberal capitalist push to, like, you know, just take more time for yourself and go to a Kundalini, you know, yoga workshop, or, you know, take a bath, or do all these things that used to happen, you know, in a sort of more communal way, where there was more communal sort of tribal kind of support for that. And I don't want to like appropriate that word, but, you know, groups of people used to take care of each other more. And now the best thing you can do is to sort of make enough money to purchase the ability to take care of yourself.
Yes.
And so there's no actual really like dismantling of the structures that oppress the people that get in the way of being able to fully express themselves. And so what's missing from the like personal expression as the like end all be all of human existence is the way that our liberation is caught up in each other. And so my own personal liberation or financial liberation does not actually automatically liberate anybody else.
Yes.
You know, I can sort of, you know, shine and that will give permission, or perhaps like, you know, be a model of how someone can do personal expression. But if you're kind of, you know, if the offerings that are out there around personal expression have like an all white lineup,
yes,
that's a fucking problem. You know, and if it, and also, even if it has like, you know, just a sort of token kind of aspect of like a couple people of color, like two, that's a fucking problem too. You know, and we're so conditioned to sort of seeing our own face, my own face, you know, represented, that because whiteness is the default. And so, you know, we need to really be unpacking that, and we need to be really looking at like, why are there mostly like white people leading these movements, and why are the conversations really just, why are we conflating you know, financial success with manifesting abundance, and therefore my soul is in alignment.
Oh, stop. Mm-mm.
And I have a big fucking problem with that. You know, because all that, so there's just the stuff that's missing is the sort of critical lens of like, you know, how is this actually going to work for most people?
Right.
You know, and how can we include people that are utterly marginalized, you know?
Right.
And I don't think that we can really do true self-care, and I don't think we can really do true personal development without really confronting the idea of whiteness and how it relates to capitalism.
Absolutely.
And that's not something that most, like, you know, like I see some folks talking about it. You know, I see Brené Brown kind of, you know, dancing around Black Lives Matter a little bit, but I do not see Liz Gilbert talking about this stuff. I do not see Glennon Monastery, what's her name, talking about this stuff, like, at all. And these are like the thought leaders of this movement.
Yep.
The last thing I want to say, and that there's so much to say, but the other piece that for me is missing is a willingness to experience shame, a willingness to entertain the radical notion that shame might be a useful emotion sometimes. That it's not categorically toxic and unproductive, and that there is a distinction and a difference between feeling shame and being shamed.
Yeah.
That there is a biological imperative to how our organism has evolved over millennia with this emotion as something that was experienced for really 500,000 years of human evolution in a more indigenous community. And that we have such a hyper individualized sort of orientation in our culture that any kind of feeling of shame is so toxic and is not something that we experience in a sort of community setting anymore. Where and so the research and the research around shame, like when you see all the stuff with Brené Brown, those cohorts, to my understanding, did not include Indigenous peoples.
Yeah.
You know, they really included like a very sort of white Western capitalist, like, you know, group that experienced shame in a very 21st century way. And so we kind of have this lack of resiliency. We have this fragility.
Yeah.
That anytime we come up against anything that's shameful, which is going to be inevitable if you start confronting whiteness.
Right.
That we absolutely can't handle it, and we shut down the conversations, we delete and block. I have seen, you know, just in social media, I've seen people of color, their genuine pain and anger just scrubbed and erased because white folks are saying, well, you're shaming me. Well, you're feeling shame, and those are not the same thing.
Yeah.
And so how can what's missing to my mind around all of this heart-centered like entrepreneurship and care and medicine is, how can we help particularly white people and particularly white women, because those are the folks that are in my field, really become more resilient to shame? And how can they move from shame and into integrity around these conversations?
Yeah.
You know, because I might feel shame, but I'm probably not going to get shot for it. You know, to be real.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And I, you know, I've started to really evaluate, I mean, from organizations, institutions, to soulpreneurs, and any type of movement that uses the words community, that uses the words healing, you know, a
revolution.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I'm like,
tribe.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, boo, can we talk? You know, let's talk about this. Let's have a conversation before if we're going to build into a future. And one of the things that my work in similar ways, you know, working with like nonprofits and working with conscious leaders toward the idea of like collective healing, understanding the impact of collective healing, and whether or not the structures that we're using both internally for sustainability, externally in our systems and things like that, are actually have a clear and precise filter and or lens for its impact. You know, the idea of insanity is doing the same fucking thing over and over and expecting different results. And I'm like, it didn't get us like it didn't get us anywhere. How the fuck you think that shit's gonna take us somewhere? Right. And to some of the pieces that you're talking about, like one of the things I've started doing in my writing and my work, and even when I'm talking, which my kids tell me it drives them crazy, but like I can say something a million different ways. And you know, it's like the teacher in me, like I can say that a million, and it's on purpose because I recognize that our capacity to understand and or take in information, it has to shift depending on the person. And so I've started to like hyphen accountability. The ability to be accountable. Response ability. You
Yeah.
have the ability to respond. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that when we're in spaces of survival, to really, we have to build our capacity to hold for all these intersections and do, and this is what I say, like, and this is what I say passionately, do the fucking work.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
the work.
Yeah.
It's messy as shit.
It is. And it will be uncomfortable, and it will maybe feel wrong
Yeah.
or, you know, like you won't always have that really like strong kind of full body truth bump. This is my heart's purpose, like that bliss realm sort of alignment feeling, that, you know, these ways that so many of us sort of really intuitive, really hypersensitive, you know, light worker type folks, where how we understand something to be true is so much about an affect that we feel, something that's somatic that we feel. And we have to hold space for I think the reality that the truth and the work will sometimes feel really incongruent.
Yes. If our commitment, and that's where, you know, a lot of the language around like creating initiatives or creating businesses, like, you know, what are your commitments? What are you standing for? And what are your values? And some of the things that I do a lot in my work is like reevaluating values and roots and its manifestations, because that's integrity. Integrity is to integrate your values. Right. And it's just like doing the, like, oh shit. Like it's imperfect, it's painful, I must course correct my, like, that is the very real human form. And we need more people willing to do that shit, like out in the open, like, oh yeah, I did fuck up. You know, like, oh shit. You know, how do I own that? And I was talking about this with my rabbi the other day, because I was saying how much I love the traditions around grief and mourning in Judaism.
No shit, right? Man, we could take a page.
Hello. Because it's like, sit with
the body.
Like, sit with.
How about it?
Sit with, you can't quick talk something. Right? Like, it's like, bring a dish and and that your presence there speaks volumes, and that there's a process to this. And to me, in a lot of the work, and what I see is like this, and now I'm like, I'll bliss block anybody. Like, I'm like, wait a minute, can we sit with this? Because we are so sick physically, because we're holding so much trauma in our body. That to not witness the very sacred act of human violation in a human being is possibly one of the most terrible byproducts of this era. Is that we want to transcend that bitch out of here. We're like, no, I'm not here. And the poor body is like, I'm sorry. My IBS is really bad. It's like, when are you going to give me some fiber? I'm dying. Right? It's like, oh shit. Like, how do we become aware of the way and that's what I love talking about with entrepreneurs, is like your marketing. What does your marketing look like? Are you fucking like making people feel like shit so that they could purchase your shit? Right.
Well,
whoopsie. Right.
Like find those pain points and push on them.
It's like whoopsie, I'm not sure what that's check that shit. Right. And it's like, oh, what does accessibility actually look like?
Right.
How much of your work is committed to that? Do you even understand what that is? Because, and to me, the painful part is like, as I myself, I'm like, you know, doing my work and showing up and working on paying my bills and shit like that. Like, why the fuck are we talking about this? Why the fuck, like, what is this thing that I need to put on an image, or anyone else, the image of abundance as defined by my self-worth? Like, that shit is crazy.
It's gaslighting, I think. You know, you're, I mean, I'm an artist. Like, I have I definitely have stuff around how I underprice or whatever, but this notion, you know, that you're, you know, you have some kind of internal block or set point around how much you're able to receive.
Yeah.
Man, that's a hella white point of view.
Yeah.
You know, like I can't imagine like taking those notions and going down to like Hazelnut Grove, which is an intentional community of houseless people that are in Portland that have received like people from all over the world because they're doing this kind of novel thing where they take over public land and fucking live on it like in a collective.
Mm-hmm.
It's freaking awesome. It's so great. And I have friends there, like, you know, houseless folks that I know. And I occasionally go and like bring my kids and like, you know, just bring a bunch of fucking Starbucks coffee and like hang out and just see who's like needing whatever.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine going there with like fully 85% of the marketing rhetoric or like the sales kinds of, you know, approaches that are in our world and being like, here's why you don't have a home.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, so what's missing is also that stuff around grief and trauma and how grief and trauma, you know, inform, you know, our socioeconomics and how we walk through the world. And so this kind of work, the work that people are doing on the heritability of trauma, on the epigenetics of trauma, on really looking at how the lack of a grief ritual of any kind of culture around grief, you know, there's such a poverty of understanding and of space holding for that like you said before we kind of went live, you know, there are people that are doing work that's been like wackadoodle, what the, you know, like the what, this sort of cray balls, you know, like weirdo people like us who are, you know, actively doing magic and, you know, casting spells and, you know, doing work on these other levels that I think have a lot to do with the land, the grief, the trauma, the place, the bioregionalism, the animism, and how those all intersect right now and how there's so much medicine that's available and that is not being used because it's very, very hard to fit that medicine into, you know, like a capitalist system. Right. Because how do you quantify it? How do you, where's the profit? Where's the means of production? You know?
Or like, I always love, you know, I hear people talk about, you know, kind of what this work looks like integrated into organizations and or institutions and, you know, the inability to data qualify.
That's right.
Right. And like, to me, I'm like, all that shit is going to get us in big ass trouble. Because you can, the system, the creation, the thing itself is meant to do a thing and to produce a thing. And we can no longer approach the work of healing the soul of community, right? Like the language I use around this, like healing the soul of community. We cannot no longer approach that work just that one. And that's why I tell folks, anything that has just, toss that shit out. There's no just. Like, our capacity has to be built to sit with the mourning and the pain. Our capacity has to be so with the generational ancestral trauma manifesting. In this particular generation, we have to have the capacity to sit with the pain that the earth is experiencing as we continue to consume resources. With no slowing down at all.
Slowing down at all.
Right. And on top of that, like every day you have to wake up, you have to take a bath, you have to clean your ass. Right? Like, right? Like, we have to eat, we have to feed our loved ones, and ourselves, right? And so it's like, our capacity to hold for this is something that we all come from ancient indigenous expressions that had ways of movement
Right.
that allowed us to move through life cycles. And to me, like in
Right.
my work, that's why life cycles is so important, because
Yeah.
I don't want you writing a check that you can't cash,
Yeah.
because the season of your life is not,
Yeah.
it's not there. There's no space for that
Yeah.
there, right?
That's not what it's time for.
Yeah. And it's like,
Yeah.
how do we become part of that? But how do we hold all the intersectionalities, because we have the ability to respond, because we're not in our cave time,
Right.
right? Because
Right.
we're not living just at a primal animal space,
Yeah.
because there is some just some more space in there to really think about how we're consciously creating in a way that would be just an equitable, that actually empowers folks,
Mm-hmm.
actually meets people where they're at. I'm like, I'm all for retreats. I'm all for that. And I think they're great. And I think they're wonderful. And I
Yeah.
think that you're honoring the place where you're stepping. I hope that you're naming the challenges, the light and the shadow that a place experiences. I hope that you refuse to accept anything less than the integration of all the pieces of that puzzle. And that's like, fuck it. Like if your initiative, it looks to stop. Don't accept anything less.
Uh-huh.
Like, be that fucking radical. You want to go kale that way.
Yeah.
Right? Like, be so fucking radical that you're like, you know what, I'm not going to do this shit until we name the fact that this is, a white movement that has no space for the mother that's working 3 jobs, that lives in the neighborhood where there's like redlining and she can't fucking move anywhere else.
That's right.
We're not doing this until this is all, like, it works for all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, we're not going to accept nothing less. And to me, like, I feel like we've gotten to a place where we just really need to start making some decisions. We're either going to fucking be committed to the healing of community and society and stop using those words as pretty little, like, font that looks sexy. Sexy font and no substance. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Like, we're in trouble. So thank you for sharing that. Absolutely. And the missing, it's like really the things that we're noticing, and how to create space for the deeper conversations that need to happen around that. And to me, it is, a piece of that's embodied in what we're doing right now, naming it.
Yeah.
Talking about its challenges and what that can look like. And then the other pieces are looking at the structures that have been created in the name of abundance. It's like, use abundance me one more time. I'm going to show you abundant.
I know. I got an abundance of rage I can unleash. About that idea.
Right. And that's just, some of the things I say is like, I say some of this like, tongue in cheek, recognizing both the complexity of it and that we have the capacity to meet fucking complexity face to face and say, all right, bitch, you want to dance? Let's do this. Right. Like we can do this.
That's right.
We can do this. And so it's not like some, theoretical idea. No, we can. We can.
And we have resources. And certainly the people that are in power, the white folks with the dollars, like we have every conceivable advantage and privilege, really, and really have the most capacity to like really shift things. And in fact, it's kind of on us, as the ones that are the gatekeepers and that do the redlining and that, make sure that the subprime mortgages were disproportionately given to Black people. Like, we're the ones that actually need to, draw upon all of the resources that we actually have to work on the strategies, to implement the strategies, and to do that work. And where I get so like is how anyone, as this gets approached with white folks, there's so much fragility around it, and there's so much like just fear and grief and shame and an absolute kind of unwillingness to really fuck it up and do it wrong and keep it and do it messy. And I mean, I had to make some amends to a woman of color in my life fucking yesterday, because her kid's in my carpool, and I got really pissed off one day that 2 families were late, and I drove off without their kids. I was just like, I sent the text. I was like, you know, they were 5 minutes late. And after 5 minutes, I was like, I'll give them another 5 minutes and then I'm leaving, you know, because I had it for my own reasons. And I realized like, that is a really shitty thing to do, you know, especially to someone who's, you know, a woman who, holy crap, she's like living a different kind of fucking life than I live.
Yeah.
And I fucked up her day because, you know, I couldn't be bothered to, you know, be 10 minutes late because I didn't feel like going into the school and signing the kids in. Like, that was the worst thing ever. It's like, turns out her husband just found out he has cancer and they've been like beside them. So they have an infant. And, you know, it was like, she, you know, and she stopped talking to me. She was kind of like, fuck that way, bitch. And I was like, you know what? That's actually fair. It's like, that's actually a totally understandable and fair response. And I had to call her up and be like, that was some fucking white nonsense that I did. And like, I'm like, categorically, you know, white women, hard to trust us, man. You know, like you see that 53% of us voted for Trump. The fuck, you know, like categorically unfucking trustworthy. And I think of myself as someone who's fairly like, you know, what, and I totally pulled, like, I had to, and was like an hour on the phone yesterday, not like asking for forgiveness, not needing her to like be my fucking friend, but just owning like, wow, I really, you know, behaved in a kind of fragilely privileged, bullshitty way. And I'm sorry, you know, and that happens, like those kinds of microaggressions and those kinds of ways that, you know, like white women of privilege walk through the world. Like, we need to like really kind of, you know, root down and soldier up a little bit. And I see all this sort of militaristic language being kind of co-opted, you know, Glennon's like love warriors and you know, the love army. And I'm just like, are you really going to do battle? Like, are you really going to like, are you going to fight for real?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Because that kind of militaristic language without the actual struggle, la lucha, like, I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Where's that fight that's actually happening? Because this sounds like maybe you want to hang out in the bliss realm.
Yeah.
Of your meditation.
The hold hands and I'm always busting on this. Holding hands is great, but it's the recognition that we cannot continue to fracture the process any longer, and be willing to own it, be willing to sit with it, be willing to recognize that shit is painful as fuck.
Yeah.
There's like, there's no fixing that. It's painful as fuck. It's painful as fuck. Like, and it's helpless as fuck. Like, bottom line. And let's talk about why you're so uncomfortable with helplessness when that's somebody's goddamn daily experience. Like, tell me that underneath that, it's not just about you. And that's what I recently wrote about that. I was like, it's all hands on deck. It's not just about you.
That's right.
Right? It's not just about you. And I get it. Initially, it just comes like right here, it lays on your chest, and you're like, oh, you know, what does this mean? Get it. Absolutely sit with that. And it is not just about you.
Right.
It is not just about how you are being perceived or how people view you. As a matter of fact, let's have that conversation over here for a minute so that you can show up fully here.
Yeah.
Because I need you
to
deal with your shit and your worry about how people perceive you and view you and being well liked.
Yeah. I can talk about that with you, with them, you know?
Yeah.
We need to have that other conversation. That separate conversation about when you unplug from the matrix and how traumatic that is.
Absolutely. Right. And it's like, that can be spoken about so that I need you to show up, and we need to have the understanding that it's going to be messy and it's going to be complicated, and and no, it doesn't have a little fucking bow at the end. And no, you know, yesterday would have been nice.
Yeah.
Yesterday would have been nice. Right. And here we are, and Black, Brown, and Indigenous bodies are still being laid out to sacrifice while there's this extraordinary privilege to think about, I don't want to offend.
Right. I'm not going to step into the arena because I might not know which vocabulary is appropriate.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
I remember I holding circle with, and I want to make sure we get to the other questions, but I was facilitating a racial justice study circle, and one of the things, this is a common theme around like wanting to say the right thing or do the right thing.
Yeah.
And I I was like, let me support you.
Mm-hmm.
It is messy as fuck.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to stumble. And as we speak right now, the language is changing.
That's
And
right.
tomorrow the language will change because it
Yeah.
continues to evolve as we get really clear about the distinctions.
Yeah.
So having said that, like, stumble into it.
Yeah.
Do it, say it, interrupt, go, oh, what you said was racist, and I may struggle right now with how to communicate the pieces about that, but these are the things I observe, and I totally see where that's coming from because there was a time that I thought about that. And like, use whatever fucking words you got. Until you know better, then you do better, right? It's like you interrupt, you stand to interrupt that cycle, because the minute you interrupt that pattern, you just fucked with the whole thing.
Yeah.
And we need more people willing to be like, yes, these are, I don't have all the words together, but yes, I don't think so.
Right.
Right. Like, let's start with the interruption, so that the person of color or whoever's experiencing the intersection of oppression doesn't feel like you're losing your fucking mind because people are treating you like you're crazy because you're naming something that they have no space to see.
Yeah.
Right? I've been there too many times. I wrote that the other day. I was like, I've put myself in so many uncomfortable positions because I know that my goddamn silence as a Jew-Eurekan means that some other person down the line has to be quiet.
Yes.
My conformity to this thing means that somebody coming down the line has to conform. And that's been the MO as people of color. Like, our shit, like, consistently. The next person comes in line and they're expected
That's right.
The polite, like,
yes. And we do not need to all have the same politics to do that work. When you kind of look at, the people that got the Jews out of Germany and the people that did the Underground Railroad, they were like all over the map, politically. And certainly there were like some, affinity. But it was really like everyone kind of got clear that the shit was fucked up. Right. And I will hide you.
Yeah.
I will actually put my shit on the line for you. And we don't have to have the same, we don't have to have voted the same way. Yeah. Or even like, you can be a socialist and a communist and, and capitalist, like whatever. It doesn't, we can still agree that, we can take action, to preserve, because this is that time where people are sort of feeling like, I don't want to really say anything because it's so divisive, and I want to keep everyone in a place of unity and kumbaya. And so then they will eventually, they will come for us too. It's not like an if, it's a when, and when resources are finite, and as you see, climate change kind of escalating, and things about the water, wherever the water's going to be, who's going to get the water. I mean, we're really like, that shit is for real right now. Flint, Standing Rock, fucking, that's been going on at Unistoten camp up in British Columbia for like 10 years. They've had like indigenous folks being like, no pipeline here. Like, this is actually, again, not new.
Right.
Movements. Right. And it's always taken people to risk. There's always a fucking risk.
Yeah.
Whether it's status, that you will lose status, or that you will risk being misunderstood, or you will risk, saying people of color instead of African American. What do you say? You're going to have to risk something. You're going to have some skin in the game if you don't have skin in the game.
Yeah. Yeah. Right on.
And so you might, have some discomfort in your relationships and in your family and in your social media circles,
Yeah. Yeah.
but now's the time for that. Now is the time for that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh man, when I think about all this, I'm like, and this is what I usually do. I'm like, I hope that folks are really taking moments to make deep love, enjoy pleasure, because this shit is so fucking intense.
I agree.
And we are in we are picking up the baton for a next generation.
Yep.
Somewhere the idea was sold that it was done. It hasn't been done. Some people are like, we need to take act, they're doing that thing. And I'm like, yes. And just a little bit of context.
Yeah.
There was some mofos showing up way before you knew how to clean your ass. And they've been fighting this shit like in their lifetime. And then there was people before them. So how about we just commit to showing up for our lifetime and like do the work that we are meant to do, because this is a long-term kind of journey. It doesn't just, and that's my thing. And that's what I say, like, about when I look at my daughter and watching her rising. And watching my sons rising, I'm like, yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Like, I know that my time where I can, as an activist, can step into some more places of like nourishment and filling can happen, because I know that the next generation's coming up with their ideas, they're like, and bringing what they need to bring to the table, because it'll be distinct than what I'm bringing to the table.
It will.
And that, and that I love. The next one that we have here is strategies. What are the strategies that to you are powerful in this conversation, and that kind of set you on fire, and they're like, that's the thing to you that you're bringing to it, and that you feel that it's just catalytic for change in equity justice?
Well, I love that question, because I do always want to say, like, so what, there's, and as much as I sort of value a certain amount of, kind of intellectual rigor around, like I said, that's sort of missing from some of the conversations, we can also very much get stuck there. And very much get stuck in a very kind of, academic and cerebral way of understanding how to move forward, and which flavor of Marxism is going to be most appropriate for these times. And I really enjoy, like, I find discussions around systems and power systems and hierarchies or lack thereof really, really compelling. Because I really appreciate, I appreciate structure and framework, and praxis, to have something to kind of to hang my instincts on. And there are people much, much smarter than I am who have thought much, much more deeply about all of this. And so I do think that I make time to read actual books, which I know, that's not how everyone, gets information most effectively. But for me, really looking at what non-dominant voices are saying about systems of power are really, really important. So, I have made a commitment to just read like women of color, maybe for the rest of my life. Like I've, I don't know. I was an English major, and I have read so many dead white men at this point that I don't need to, I read really 100% nonfiction at this point. I find that anarcha-feminism, bioregional anarcha-feminism is a really helpful sort of framework for understanding how to contextualize my own work. And there's a tremendous amount of really great writing out there. AK Press does some great stuff. So, I've tried to really put the voices of marginalized, brilliant thinkers kind of at the forefront of the media that I consume. And that really has helped me tremendously. Like even just curating your Facebook feed to like show you can kind of prioritize, who you see first, and really looking at, think more radical people of color, Indigenous, Black, Brown, queer, folks that are saying really important shit that I'm not going to think of myself because of, who I am and who I am, in a political context. And so just figuring out what kind of information, you're going to populate your consciousness with, I think is a really, really important place to start. I think I really used to think until kind of recently that the medicine was really about connecting more to the land that we're on. And I do think, like you say, the disconnect from the sort of rhythms and the biology of our animal organism and how we interact with the land and how much how we use the relationship with the more than human world, the animistic world, so helped us move through all of these issues that we don't really have sort of space or context for. And I do think that stuff's really, really important. What I think needs to happen first is a certain amount of decolonization.
Yes.
And I mean, actual decolonization too, like where, maybe some of us can GTFO the land and give it back, I actually really believe that. I don't know if we can I don't know if I can repatriate to Ireland. I'm not sure if there's room, but I do think it's worth at least considering actual reparations, actual decolonization, but also the decolonization of our own consciousness, where we really kind of unpack a settler colonial lens and viewpoint, where so much out there is really for me to consume.
Right.
It's all there for me to consume, all the indigenous wisdom, all the medicine and the plant medicine and the, wisdom traditions. They're all just available to me.
Right.
So that needs to be checked and questioned,
absolutely,
really rigorously, so that, yes, we need to do sort of land-based, magic and ritual and ceremony. But let's make sure that we're not just sort of perpetuating domination and colonialism and just consuming, wisdom because we feel like, well, it's available to me, and so the decolonization that has to happen, I think, before the sort of re-indigenizing, as it were. I hesitate to sort of appropriate that word, but to cultivating those land relationships in tandem with, actual decolonization, both internal and external. I think that stuff is urgent and needs to happen.
Yes.
Like 5 fucking minutes ago.
Yeah. And that's where that shit is, like yesterday. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, before yesterday. How about that? Yeah. And
it's been 500 years.
Shit. Yeah. Right. And, I think, thank you for naming that, because to me, like, this is where all the kind of that gritty medicine is at, and the acknowledgement and the ability to account for the conditioning and the mentality and the unpacking of that, and what can that look like and what does that mean, and what does it mean for those who have lived unaware of their own ancestral history and narrative and connection to that, and what does it look like in 2016 to recognize that we have it's amazing too, because I still think about the ways they sell the American dream. That's funny. Right. It's like, let's begin with some internal decolonizing so that we can begin to shift the lens. And that's what I tell folks. Like, to me, if we can get that lens in and that filter that critically analyzes these different intersections of oppression, like we can start doing something, right? It's like we can start somewhere, because it requires the internal filter to start saying, oh shit, my desire to, and I did that the other day. I was like, I'd like to live on some space and grow some. No, what the fuck am I talking about? This shit isn't even, I'm like, what the fuck am I talking about? What am I talking about? And I was like laying in bed. I'm like, what? Really loud. What the fuck am I talking about? And just recognizing, like, I'm gonna find a home to, it's either Puerto Rico, Israel, or Spain. There's Africa. Somebody take me.
Yeah.
It's like, take me back. This place is like, they fucked it up here, and this is where I live.
It's true. Oh God. Oh my God.
So it's like, it's just that recognition and the pain that has, and the acknowledgement, even as a person of color, how distinct that looks for me. And what it means to come from place and what geographical location looks to me, and to have been assimilated and conditioned to have the mind and or the structure and conditioning of another that is not myself. Right. And the dissonance in that. So the last two are, one is life support. So what do folks showing up need to hear? Now this life support question is extremely specific to activists and advocates. And to me, in the same way with the framework of leadership that I work with, conscious leadership, to me, the deconstruction of that is that we all, when we recognize our ability to respond to shit and show up, we are activating and becoming activists and advocates for something. And so rather than the heroic way that it can look, and people idealize that and glorify that and think that we're outside and beyond that, like if I just interrupt my grandfather saying some real asshole thing, right? Like, that is an act of activism to interrupt the pattern and the cycle. And so when I say what's life support, there is a distinction in folks that are not only doing that on a personal level, but on a really collective level, using their platforms to give space and name to it. And so what does life support look like to you, and that you think folks need to, and it's interesting because I'm very much like, I like to dive deep into what's painful and what's challenging and really keep that real, and also name the ways that things can be life-giving and life-sustaining, so that we can actually do this for the long term and not just short little blurbs. So what to you does life support look like?
I think that it looks like really understanding what medicine do you have to offer? What is what's your gift and your medicine? Though I because of the childhood that I had and the kind of parents that I had and the way that I incarnated this time around, I am a warrior. I have, I can go to battle. I'm got some Viking, rage, and I can do that kind of, you can sort of see my middle finger from space. Like it's on Google Earth. Like you can totally tell that, that's what I am equipped, to really, be a much more sort of confrontational kind of warlike person, which is a funny medicine because of how I present, because of a certain aspect of my physicality, because of how I appear, and but I'm actually really and so it's a bit of a bait and switch sometimes that I can pull, but that's not necessarily what everyone is meant to do. I think that we can all stand to maybe, I think we can be fierce when it's appropriate to be fierce. But really understanding that, you have some medicine in to offer in this struggle, that is, unique to you. But that is also, worth looking at how you cultivate it, and how you, can do it in community, that, that we're not just, isolated individual. We such a hyper individualistic kind of culture, that to be able to understand how you can use your medicine to move from an individual perspective to a systems approach, that's kind of that lens that we keep talking about. And it's very, very, very difficult. It's very, very, very hard for people, at least who are very sort of embroiled and inside the system to really understand that, you know, we need to move from like a purely individual perspective on oppression and race to a sort of systems understanding with all the intersections, you know, and all the layers. Because certainly as a woman, I have experienced oppression, you know, as someone who's lived through rape, as someone who's lived through sexual abuse, I've experienced oppression and just, you know, even economic and whatever. But, and, you know, there's all these other layers that require work. And how can I bring my medicine into, you know, those layers, you know, to continue to, you know, unravel and do the, really do one of the things I want to mention on this call is, you know, I know that there are so many people that have a lot of anxiety, you know, depression, anxiety. There's a lot of trauma stuff out there. But I definitely see, especially among sensitive kind of heart-based personal development white ladies that are into spirituality, there's a tremendous amount of talk around anxiety and self-care. And one of the things that I think that is life-giving that can really help with anxiety is justice work. Is that if you really can move into understanding justice as an essential nutrient for your own well-being. Not and it is also, you know, it's for other people, but like, you know, because we have such a culture of sort of like this self-improvement and focusing on yourself and self-care and self, that, you know, there is a way that you can really move into justice work as a key portion of what it means to take care of yourself. That it will nourish you. Yes. You know, because it will cultivate empathy and it will cultivate a sense of being with other people. And it's a way that you can derive comfort by sharing the comforts that we have as people of privilege. Right. So I don't know if that speaks to that question. I'm not really sure.
I love that. Listen, Linda. Yes, absolutely. You know, it's one of those, like, recognize again, you know, the flow of what needs to come to the surface and what needs to be said. And the way, you know, one of the things I love evaluating and supporting around the evaluation of is like, how aligned are we actually to our values and the things that we say that mean something to us? You know, when we say something like love, or when we say something like equality, or when we're talking from that place and yet our existence lives in dissonance to that. Right. The cognitive impact, the emotional, physical, like mind, body, soul type of joint impact of that can just create a whole array of things that, you know, we can either get stuck with the self thing, or realize that it's going to require action. To kind of move and align with, I believe in love as a source and the capacity to hold the challenges, and that it has action and it has a verb component to it that allows me to engage in a work that's bigger than I am.
Right. And that's what unity really means. Like, we talk about unity consciousness, and, you know, we talk about, you know, this sort of wanting to not be, you know, divisive. And really, you know, true unity comes from solidarity, you know? And that's solidarity means you have to take action, and you have to put, you know, other people's perspectives, at the center. And that's pretty hard when the world revolves around white people. You know? That's some work. But I see people trying to do that, and stepping into those roles where, you know, okay, I'm going to now try to engage in some justice work, and I'm kind of going to first make it all about me. You know, I mean, I did when I first, the first Black Lives Matter, you know, march that I went to, I stood right in front. I was just like, I am so proud to be here. And I was, you know, shit, like it took me you know, some reading and so a couple years really of like being like, oh, I'm supposed to be on the side.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
You know, and I'm glad that there wasn't that I did not suffer a tremendous amount of like lateral violence of other, you know, activists who, you know, seek to kind of, you know, one up how woke we are or whatever by doing sort of lateral shaming and lateral violence. And I can't say that I'm not, you know, guilty of behaving in that way myself. It is very hard to not lash out at people that are fucking it up.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other conversation about calling out and calling in and what works and what doesn't work and why and how you just make those, you know, discern that stuff. But that, you know, we can keep showing up.
Yeah.
We can keep showing up in an imperfect way. And staying in our joy. Really, I don't necessarily have a lot of hope at this point in terms of sort of the Titanic, you know, turning around, in terms of, are we going to be able to really fix everything in a way that will keep us at the current level of consumption and life, quality of life?
Right.
Big fucking question mark in my mind around that.
Yeah.
You know, but I do think that we can, so I don't know so much about hope, but I do know about joy, you know, and I think that we will need to access joy, and we will need to access joy in the face of great grief and great trauma. And even when things go really sideways, there's still a need to have joy and connect with joy, not as a sort of spiritual bypass, but as a way of, you know, making, you know, from the lotus that comes out of the mud and the diamond that comes out of the pressure, with each other.
Yeah. To me, that's so powerful, because I think often enough folks get stuck in the polarizing of the conversations in ways that like, oh, so we can't
have anything.
You can't do anything. Everything's wrong. It's like, okay, take a deep breath. Let's start with that. And secondly, let's, again, back to the and really thinking about, you know, it's funny because I was saying the other day, I was like, you know, like as a Puerto Rican, we're so known for so much like joy and passion. I'm like, and then, you know, as a Jew, you know, we're like jubilant, you know, we got all this joy, and like, you know, we know how to party. I come from cultures that know how to take down a party. Right. And one of the moments that I had the other day was just sitting deeply and reflecting on understanding that because we've experienced so much oppression and so much pain and so much loss, that the moments that there are to celebrate, we take that baby to the fullest.
Yeah.
You know that in that moment, joy and us and joy have a date, and we are about to make love in this moment and savor it in this moment. Because tomorrow we all have to get up and figure out how we're going to survive.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, it's this and if we can understand that when we're talking about kind of how love can save the world, or how love can, love cannot bypass or jump over or bliss out or transcend the presence of pain, the presence of loss, the presence of murder, the presence of death, the presence of the weight of what it means to be other.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like, if we can at least come to a common understanding that my bawling and my like reading in pain is as sacred and important. My anger is as holy, goddammit, as the fucking moment that I'm like dancing salsa with my daughter. Like, fuck, we could do something. We could heal something, right? Yeah. If we can get some of that and understand that that's the complexity of our human existence, and that we can rise to that.
Yeah.
Like this shit, we can do this, right? It's like we can do this because we can mourn.
Mm-hmm.
Those who are mourning, we can be present with loss and pain and not try to fix it or make it pretty. There's no such thing.
Yeah.
There's no such thing. And there's no such thing when the human spirit's violated, when the human body's violated. You're on a journey for the rest of your goddamn life to heal and recover.
Right.
Whatever that looks like. And so and to me, like, solidarity is so important because it's the idea of, can you be with me?
Yeah.
Can you be with me? Can you be with me when it's so dark? Can you be with me when the light is so bright that it warms the entire inside of my being? Can you be with me when I have questions more than I have answers, and when I have answers and very little questions? Can you sit with me? Can you be with me? Can you act with me? Can you fight with me? Can I trust you?
Yeah.
With everything that's precious. And to me, those are becoming like the foundational questions. Like, can I trust you? Because if I can't trust you with my pain, how can I trust you with my joy?
Mm-hmm.
How can I even remotely let you into the spaces of my existence that have been so fraught with challenge, and that have, like, in certain ways, like, created little fractures and cracks in my psyche, in my being, that I have to spend the rest of my life working through and healing through.
That's right.
Right. And so for me, in our conversations, there's so much medicine, because in all the complexity and more questions. I was at a dinner and I was like, we were asking more questions. We had more questions than answers. I'm like, we're good Jews. We're good Jews. We did it. More questions than answers. Right. It's like,
wow. Right.
That is like, I'm like, that is sacred right there. Damn it. We did it. You know, it's like, let's pass the grape juice for me. Right.
Right.
This recognition of the good work that there is in the honest conversations and the naming of all of this. And
how important it is to do it, you know, when it's very hard to, this is like, to be able to sit with somebody and also then not extract emotional labor from them.
Yes. Ooh, girl, I feel like that's gonna be like a whole nother video, but go ahead.
Kind of. I mean, you know, like, emotional labor as even just as an idea is really important. And when you look at, particularly at, like, people of color and marginalized folks, and the amount of other kinds of labor, other kinds of unpaid labor that they do, not just, like, you know, in terms of, you know, raising white women's children and, you know, doing all this other kind of behind the scenes stuff, but on the energetic level, you know, on the sort of ancestral level, like, there's so much unpaid, you know, labor that is being extracted. From folks, and that we need to, and as white folks, we need to be really careful in our solidarity work that we are not doing more of that. And it's gonna happen. Like, it's, you know, and I see us kind of, you know, bumbling our way through. You know, there's a woman who has a podcast, and after the election was like, oh my gosh, I've never had any people of color on my podcast. I need to deal with that, you know, and kind of had, you know, a woman of color on, and sort of treated her like a zoo animal, you know. It was kind of like, because just so, like, you know, we have to make sure that we don't go around collecting Black people like Pokemon. Like, that's not the way, you know. Like, like, we can kind of see where there's this gap, and so we want to, like, we just want to fill it in with all the other people, you know. But to actually be in relationship, to actually, you know, enter into a solidarity relationship and commitment means that we can't just then treat it as another way to make us feel better. To assuage our own guilt, shame, discomfort. Like, we need those spaces too. Like, white people need those spaces to really have those other kinds of conversations. But that, you know, we really pay attention to the kind of the natural resources that we extract.
I call that the exotification. Right. There's like, you know, can you tell me what that must be like to, and I'm like, So let's have this other conversation.
Yeah.
Like, let me support. So, you know, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done. I think of the humanity and the integrity of our engagements and the way we move in the world and our relationships. And, you know, some of the challenges I remember recently having a conversation with someone about the idea of like, as a white person, they struggled with like, you know, nothing they do is right. Nothing they say is right. Like kind of that narrative.
Yeah.
And, you know, we need to address this whole right and wrong idea, but like one of the things that has become like super important for me in some of those conversations is the ability to continue to name its messiness and to name its challenges and to name that the very context of that struggle comes from an idea of getting things right.
That's right.
Of accomplishing something.
Yeah. And arriving.
Yes. And, you know, I'm like, thank you, American education. Yes, you've done a good job. Like everybody thinks now everything is like something you got to get an A on. Great.
That's right.
Wonderful. You know what I mean? It's like, we're all fucking trouble.
Right. And when you've been told that you're exceptional and when you've been told that,
yes,
that super duper A plus,
and if you have like this massive education that you paid for, shit. Like you better know shit and you better know how to handle shit. And I'm like, I'm sorry to disappoint you. And I want to grieve with you at the amount of money you spent on that education that further convinced you. The mode of operation is the way everything functions, and the activism and advocacy and solidarity function in that same way. And I'm so sorry that when you come with your beautiful white ideas of what the solution is, most people of color are like, what the fuck are you talking about? Right? Like, and you know, not cruel, but just like a real, like, what the fuck was that? Like, you know, we're trying to eat, goddamn it! Like, are you kidding me? We're just like, we just want to eat right now. Like, can we eat dinner? Shit.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, we just worked 3. Can we eat dinner? Like, and so it's like this huge.
But it's gonna need to be organic and local. There's a mindful way.
And I'm always like, so let's talk. You know, because I do this work as a trainer, so I'm like, let's talk. This is the place. This is where we're going to talk about this. And the recognition, like the work that has to, the deconstruction and dismantling that has to happen internally in order for you to more fully understand and have the capacity to understand the nature of the work. Right? The nature of showing up and the nature of like, what is it that your people do? My daughter the other day, that girl kills me. She's a Scorpio. I'm an Aquarius. She's super, super sharp like that. And, you know, somebody had mentioned to her about like, what is she? She was like,
like, what are you?
Yeah. Like, what? And she works at a stand and that serves like Puerto Rican food. And often enough, somebody will come and, you know, say something Mexican about the food, and she supports their correction and wisdom, and then they'll come back the next time and do the same thing. And I'm like, it's all just exotic, daughter. It's all just exotic. And so, you know, that the willingness to be vulnerable enough to be corrected.
That's a really important point. I just want to like anchor that a bit. The willingness to be vulnerable enough to be corrected. Like all these like vulnerability porn for like, you know, like
because to not know.
That's right.
The very educated white supremacist concept structure. Right. To not know is to be less than.
That's right.
To lack. And somehow some sort of education is going to give you a knowingness that nothing else can get. This is what we've been told. Nothing else can give you what, an education can give you. Lo and behold, your education is constructed by white male people with wigs from,
right.
whose great grandbabies continue to think this is the way to go, and then create economic opportunities based on the structure. And whoa.
Right. Not so much. Not anymore. I mean, less and less, certainly less and less.
Yeah. If
it's not a
you're
guarantee.
fortunately exposed to other opportunities outside of that particular context, right? And so I sit with a friend of mine who grows herbal CSA, or I guess it would be, and we have these herbal warrior circles, because we bring in kids from the Youth Intervention Center, we do circle work, and then expose them to the plant medicine and stuff like that, to offer an alternative to what we classically know as success, or being informed and or educated.
Right.
To call them back to themselves. Of course, the manifested disproportionate impact of that system is for Black and Brown folks, and sitting there with them to offer them a distinct, that may be the only time they're exposed to that.
That's right.
Right. And privilege has such a plethora of ways of things looking. And yet for everybody else, which is still the push, and I totally get it, it's still the push to go to school, finish your education, so that then you can be somebody in the world to Black, Brown, and Indigenous kids. This push, education is everything.
Yeah.
Right? That 9-to-5 job that gives you a 401k that can go bankrupt is everything.
Right.
And so it's recognizing that a lot of our work, there's so many pieces to this, and this is why we need hands on deck.
That's right.
To rethink the way we've thought about ourselves and others and our society and its constructs, so that we understand the nature of how our unique gifts and skill sets can come to the table and be part of the greater liberation. Right? And that to me is our work, and it's a journey. There's no the journey is the work. There's no, we're going to pass away. Somebody else is going to do what we're doing, and as it should be.
Right.
So I've come up to time. I have to go sit with little people, which I love doing at a school, to talk about social justice.
Wow.
Yeah, I love the littles. They're so cute.
I got to go get mine too. Yeah.
So Rachael, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me and to answer these inquiries that have so many directions they can go in, because it's it can go in a million ways. And I strongly trust and believe that in the words that we've said, in the ways that we showed up, it's what's needed for whoever does across the video and listen to our conversation. Some people are going to be like, fuck yeah, hell yeah. Other people are going to be like, oh my God.
I know. Yeah.
No, not more work.
Right.
And then somebody else is going to be like, I don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And that's okay, right? And everybody's on a journey in that. Hopefully they'll find their path, and hopefully they will open up to the vulnerability that is required in order to fully show up as folks and do the work that we need to do to dismantle and deconstruct both the white supremacy and the racial systemic oppression, and how that manifests interpersonally and personally. Also sexism, ableism, intellectualism, classism, right? It's a long line of things that we can definitely name. Yeah. And so
there's support. There are people, and you don't have to do it alone.
Yeah, right on. Where can folks find you if they wanted to find you?
You can go to rachaelrice.com. That's RACHAEL, rice.com, rice like the food. I do a lot of conversations over on Facebook too. I think having social media conversations are pretty important, just to be the media. And I have a newsletter. I'll be working on a sort of unconventional e-course called Magical Radical that's going to be delivered via an iOS app, which is the first time I've sort of said that online. It's $4.99 a month. So it's super affordable. So stay tuned for that. And I am really excited about these conversations. There's so much medicine in this one. I feel like I could listen to it like 5 more times and get new stuff out of it. Thanks for your seva, for your service that you're doing. It is no fucking joke. And I have tremendous respect for you and the work that you do. And just to be in proximity to you is a gift. Thank you.
Yeah, the same. That's why I commented on Mary Beth's thing, and I'm like, I can't wait to hug the both of you. That's just like, fucking squeeze you both to death.
Right.
Thank you so much for the honor of being in space.
Likewise. And I am so excited to see how these conversations unfold and to share them and just see their impact, because I think they're deep and great and wide.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And so they'll be on my YouTube channel, Angelique Arroyo, and however you share it, Rachael, as well on your social media. It'll be put out there and doing its thing.
Great.
So thank you.
Thank you. All right. Take good care. Okay. Bye, honey.
Bye-bye.